Okay, two housekeeping things to kind of preface our step-by-step fixing of the Pistons. We did this with the Wizards last week, so they can have about $32 to $33 million in cap space if they renounce Corey Joseph, re-sign Hamidou Diallo, which I think they will because he was pretty solid last year for them at a little bit of a raise. I said $6 million, take it or leave it. That's what I think it'll probably be, maybe seven, whatever. They also have a team option on Alec Burks at $10.5 million. And they have the number 5 overall pick, where Troy Weaver said, if it's going to help us move forward, we'll entertain anything. We're excited about this draft pool, but we'll try to move the team forward any way that we can. And so my general thoughts here on the Pistons are somewhat of what you mentioned with how dead they looked. If you can convert, if all they did, if their main goal in terms of building around this young core was to upgrade the veteran supporting cast that they have from guys you didn't remember were still in the league outside of Bogdanovic to real veteran helping players, I'm all on board. But that's probably the extent of where I would be comfortable going based on where they are. So if you take Corey Joseph and turn that into a real NBA point guard, if you take Alec Burks is actually better than you would think, but I think he's better on a good team than a bad team. If you turn him into just maybe like a competent floor spacer rather than a like kind of second unit offense guy, which they kind of already have too many cooks in the kitchen with their guard rotation anyway. Burks was good for them last year with Cade out, but probably not so much this year. If you do that kind of stuff, you probably can sign me up for that, and I might like it. But if you're saying you're taking a huge step forward or trying to really like go for broke this offseason, that's where I get into a little bit of trouble. So we can do the pick in a second with the number 5 pick, but do you use question number 1, do you use the cap space to sign a vet or keep it open for trades? And do you have any names in mind that for either one of those things you might try to target if you're Detroit and Troy Weaver?
I would be going after like younger vets who I think could help you like now and in the future. That's what I would be going at. So these are guys, Austin Reeves, Grant Williams, who I think would fit nicely into the Saddiq Bey size hole that they didn't want to be in the Saddiq Bey business. I get that, but okay, Cam Johnson would be there as well. That's the kind of guy that I would be trying to use my money on. Otherwise, I'm cool with keeping it open for trades because like I think you have to get pieces that maybe help you now, but aren't like overpays to like accomplish nothing. This team, they have to, I think, remember in the back of their heads. Brendon, how many games do you think worse than the Charlotte Hornets, who were 14th in the East last year, do you think the Pistons were? How many games worse?
How many games worse than who? The Charlotte Hornets?
Who finished 14th in the East. How many games back of 14th place did the Pistons finish last year?
I mean, I know they were 17-65. It doesn't get much worse than that. So I'll say the Hornets won somewhere in the low 20s. So maybe let's say 5 games worse than the Hornets.
10 games worse than the Hornets. The Hornets finished 27-55. And I get you only had Cade for 12 games, whatever. It is going to be like, it doesn't, even if you bring Cade back and that gives you some wins, it is like going to be, it doesn't happen where you go from like 15 to 9. Like that kind of scale up would be like that's really unprecedented and really hard.
And this wasn't an injury where Cade like played behind the scenes. Like it seems like he was in significant pain for a lot of this time. So I don't think you're going to be like, oh, he got better. This is going to be year 2 for Cade, like for all intents and purposes.
Yeah. That's how I would view it. I think you should view it that way. So I'd be looking at guys like Reeves, like Grant, like Cam, who fit what you want to do. And if you don't get them because they're RFAs, that's fine. You don't go spend your money on stuff that's not kind of like really facilitating you, and you can't trade forward. Like I think if they went and spent big money on like an older vet on the market, you might be thinking, oh, can you trade that forward? You can make a mistake by spending that money and not being able to trade that guy forward, and then it's just kind of clogging up your situation. Even if they wanted like a point guard, let's say they called Fred VanVleet, like called Clutch, and we're like, Fred, what would it take you to come to Detroit, be our veteran point guard? Aren't you also stifling to figure out what you have in Jaden Ivey, what you have in Cade Cunningham if you go do that? Like I think Fred's can play a little off ball and stuff, but it's like that's just like going to eat into the reps of a already guard rotation to me.
Well, that's exactly what I was going to say. Part of what's interesting about the Pistons compared to other teams is usually the the kind of hand in glove thing. What the Suns did when Monty got there was, let's go get a veteran point guard. But for the Pistons, not all of, a lot of their young players are guards between Hayes, Ivy, and Cade. So you don't really want to clog that up too bad. And so that's what's tough. That's why I actually think somebody like Bogdanovic did make a lot of sense, and I think they were smart to go get him, and probably why Dwayne Casey was reportedly just like obsessed with the dude, because it's like, you're the only good thing we have here. You're the only stability on this roster. But I have 3 unrestricted free agent options at varying levels that I want to throw your way to get your reaction. All right, so we'll start at the top. No, we'll start at the bottom. They're all pretty good, though. Harrison Barnes.
Do you need him when you have Bogdanovic?
I think Harrison Barnes is somebody where probably there's overlap with Bogdanovic. We'll get to Bogdanovic in a second, though. There could be some movement there, too, and maybe he's more of a replacement for Bogdanovic. But either way, I think somebody at the forward spot who, because that's the other thing, a lot of their young players are also centers. They're guards and centers, so they need wings and forwards. So it's like, to me, if you can get a forward who's played on young teams before, is a very good vet for everything, from everything you always hear, and can actually do something with the ball in his hands and plays both ends of the court, that feels like a good kind of mix where you could imagine like Harrison Barnes dribbling up the court and starting a dribble handoff with Cade to kind of give him training wheels a little bit, or the same thing with any of their guards. So that was my favorite, because I think you could get him pretty cheap.
I like that. I think you need to just flip Bogdanovic for something else, but I'm all for it. I think he is the perfect kind of like older vet that it's like you kind of know there's a limit on what he's going to give you at that spot, so this would buy you time to find like the real solution, but it also probably helps your culture now if he's willing to kind of step into that phase of his career and he doesn't stay in Sacramento.
And you have enough cap space where if Harrison Barnes is willing to take some smaller type of salary, $14 million or something, you still have enough where you could offer Cam Johnson something, especially if you decline the Alec Burks option, because then you have $40-something million of cap space. So you can start to groom, whatever the next guy might be, or have Barnes come off the bench, etc. All right. Second tier of free agent unrestricted. Can I interest you in a reunion between the state of Michigan and one Draymond Green?
Oh, buddy. Oh, man. Number one, Matt Ishbia would be like fuming because he's like, you took my Spartan. Number two, if Draymond
should
was
say goodbye to unrestricted free agency for the rest of his time as owner. That's a joke.
Yeah. Oof. If Draymond was willing to do it and like really be a leader for a young team in a way that like is just very different than the leadership and the Warriors stuff, right?
Yeah.
I would be all for it.
I actually don't hate it as much as I thought when it came into my brain. I was like, this is going to be fun. We'll just like joke around, but it wasn't really a joke. I actually think it could work.
Love it. Love it.
I think for the big men, it'll help, and the guards, it'll help.
It would if he was like willing to do this and be like, okay, like I'm leaving Golden State. I'm not going to go try to win titles. I want to just like make a bunch of money and like also be a mentor. Pretty good place for him to do it.
And it
pretty
would
great place for him to do
like a pride standpoint, because that's always tough with guys in his particular position. Chris Paul has had this difficulty before too, where you kind of don't want to end up in a spot that's just like disrespectful. Whether it's a trade or, I'm just going to take such and such team's money because I'm a restricted, because I want to make more than the Warriors offered me, and I just want to like take the PRW and move on. Like that sucks. So you don't want to end up in that spot. So, hey, I'm going home. Like that's a way to kind of sell it a little bit. All right. Last one is Chris Middleton. A reunion as well to the franchise that drafted him and then got rid of him like idiots.
I don't hate it, but I also, the overlap with Cade I think is kind of interesting. That feels like a real, like you're scaling. Like Draymond would also feel like you're trying to scale up to something, but Middleton would feel even more so because Middleton is like a playoff shot maker type, that it's like, okay, like what are we doing with this at this big number, and not even like the reputation at least of being that like culture setting leader that Draymond is in that way, right? Like, or even Harrison Barnes is. Like, that's where he, I think, feels different than those other guys, is that we don't understand him. Not to say he isn't that, but we don't understand him as like the leadership guy, whereas he's like, oh, he's like your big wing shot maker type. That's what we have come to understand him as in the context of Giannis's Bucks.
I think that's fair. That would feel like a too quick of a step forward. Also, like, I don't know if no matter what stage of team building I'm in, want to necessarily be in the business of betting on Chris Middleton to actually still be playable. I mean, all respect to him, but like, from a team building standpoint, that is a risk. And whatever team pays him, the medicals are going to be a key part of that. So if I'm a young team clogging my cap sheet with my one big move, I don't know if I want it to be a guy who hasn't really played consistently for 2 years. That's not great. So yeah, I think that's where we are. There's also smaller moves. Seth Curry, Terrence Ross, JaMychal Green. Those are just some shooters I found. A lot of their best lineups had Sadiq Bey in them, who you mentioned. So I think just what that tells me, it's less about Bey and more just like, hey, when they had actual shooting on the court, they tended to play better. Not a surprise. They should be trying to find that as well. Quick hits on some of these other things. If you could get a top 20 pick for Bojan Bogdanovic on draft night, would you do it?
No.
So just keep him because of the value he has for the other guys?
That's where I'm at with it. I would rather, like, if you were going to do that, you should have just done it at the deadline last year.
Yeah, agreed. I thought they should have done it at the deadline too. It felt like they kind of overplayed their hand a little bit there, pretending like, you can get 2 firsts. Like, on what planet? Just do the trade. Do a trade that's out there, a real one, not one you're pretending is there.
Yeah, well, like him in Detroit already kind of told us, like, what he went for in Detroit already kind of told us that his value wasn't maybe as high as like there was posturing to be.
Goofy.
Yeah.
Agreed. Yeah, because Danny Ainge tried the same thing with the Jazz, and then all of a sudden it was like, hold on, that's all that the Pistons had to deal for him, and then the Pistons were like, no, we're gonna get even more, and then they did not. So it's like, yeah, I agree, just pull the trigger, but I think a top 20 pick is pretty good value, but you would have to kind of have a backup plan because, again, you don't want to end up with just complete young youth terribleness on your roster.
Slash, like, you have like 90 centers and playing like 2 of them together isn't really going to work. So like maybe just like have options to not play 2 centers together.
All right. Speaking of centers, do you extend Isaiah Stewart in free agency this year?
No.
Look,
the best young center in the they will do for one of them. I suspect it might be Wiseman. But Brendon, the best young center on the roster is Jalen Dirt. That's the best young center on the roster. Like,
well,
that's the guy that
is we actually don't know if he's a center. He doesn't really have a position because he just shoots threes, and that's pretty much all that he does. Rebounds, I guess, pretty well.
Yeah, right.
But like, doesn't
I just
really
look at like their center position.
Anybody.
Right.
Yeah. No, Jalen Dirt is absolutely the guy that they should be building around. You're right. I'll give it back to you.
Yeah, it's just like I just look at the centers and I'm just like, how do these guys fit? How much am I willing to like extend for a backup to Jalen Duren, who was 19 last year and was like the best player of these 3, and like unlike like James Wiseman, like has had spurts of looking like a real NBA player, and like unlike Isaiah Stewart, like we kind of know what his position is and what he's going to be. Like, he had like a really good, interesting rookie season for someone who came into the league at 19, and like he's 6'10", 250. I think he'll get stronger. Like, I like what he is quite a bit, and as you build up him, I'm kind of thinking about my center position centered on him. So like, how much am I willing to spend on those guys? And like, look with Wiseman, I'm sympathetic to like what he's kind of his situation. I don't think like his career has obviously been the easiest thing, but like what like next he's such a hard thing to project unless you feel great about him, and that's like, okay, we have a backup center then, or like an alternative to Duren if Duren's trajectory kind of goes in a different way than we kind of expect. I get that, but it would be a massive bet. I don't even know how to properly evaluate it. Is the other part of this. It's like, how do you say like this is how these guys help us scale up and win right now? That's like where I'm looking at both those guys, and I don't have an answer to that. I don't.
I think Stewart, I would say I would extend Stewart, even if you do just envision him as a backup. Okay, so be it. You drafted a guy who ends up being a backup. That's fine. I think to my priority being get shooting around your guards, and he does that. The team was plus 1.3 when he played last season. Now, even that was still bad because, like you said, they were miles worse than the next worst East team. But still, he provided value just like Bay, which means, hey, when they had shooting, things went well. So I want to try to keep that, especially with the fact that, again, Duran, Wiseman, even Bagley, who for some reason is on this team making $13 million, like, none of those guys shoot. So I want somebody who can shoot in my center rotation, my big man rotation, because I think he can also play next to some of those guys. And I also think, like, Stewart's probably one of the candidates you would look at and say, hey, if Monty Williams can come, bring a little bit more out of this group schematically, especially on offense, I think Stewart's one of the candidates to just feel better about after this season, right? Like, he's one of those guys you could say, hey, Monty helped because he had a clear skill, and Monty, like, put him in position to make that skill useful to the team, even if it's in 12 minutes a game. So be it. So I would probably try to do something with Stewart for, like, I don't know, however much you're going to pay Grant Williams, offer that to Isaiah Stewart, something like that.
I would like 3/4 of what you would pay Grant Williams.
Okay, so maybe you offer Grant 15 and you offer Stewart 12.
Yeah,
something like that. Yeah, Wiseman, I would just not. I mean, I know we all know the Wiseman stuff, but, like, he got more than 600 minutes as a Piston last season and had a minus 4.3 box plus minus, which is atrocious. Like, he did play and it did not go well. All right. Number 5 pick. Keep it, trade back.
Keep it. Just keep it. Like, unless someone blows you away and, like, gives you, like, a couple picks or, like, a future pick or something, I don't see the reason, not to trade back or to give up this pick. Like, you still should be in, like, talent acquisition mode if you're Detroit. This is what this era is about. You have a top 5 pick. You didn't get as obviously, like, the optimum thing here would have been to get up to, like, 2 or 3 and get one of these really game changing guys. Like, Brandon Miller would have made, I think, sense for them as, like, another wing. Even Scoot, I think, would have been somebody you really could have looked at. 5's, like, a little bit tricky for them. But if you come away with, like, Cam Whitmore, who's really young, but, like, could be, like, your successor to what Bogdanovic is, will fit nicely with what Ivy and Duran and Cunningham are. Like, that to me is a really nice outcome. And I would just take the guy you feel like you can build with. I wouldn't get too cute with this. I wouldn't be trying to trade this for anything win now. You don't have the pressure that maybe Portland does with the Dame situation. So you don't have that hanging over you, right? Like, Cade's not out here saying, like, I need to win a title, like, today. Like, there's a road to go still here with Cade. And, like, what is trading back, unless someone is going to blow you away and, like, just give you future assets to play with, which I don't think will happen for 5 in this class. I don't really see a point of trading back for, like, a protected future first or, like, some seconds. Like, just take Cam Whitmore. Just take whatever Thompson twin is still there. Take one of the guys you like there and profit from it and move on from. Like, Whitmore to me would be, like, a great pick for them at 5 if he's there.
It seems like Pistons fans kind of like Jarris Walker from Houston as well. Somebody who could be a kind of a forward option for them, can shoot it a little bit and does a lot of really high IQ, high impact things with that Houston team that I think plays a pretty pro-ready system that I would feel good betting on. I mean, we just saw Quentin Grimes come out and be ready to contribute on a playoff team right away. I would be willing to bet on those guys. So, like, somebody like that. I think they got kind of screwed, not only not getting one, obviously, to not get Wemby, but to not even get in the top 3, because I think that's really the only spot you could have gotten somebody to want to trade up. No one's going to trade up to 5 in a 3-player draft. It's really a 1-player draft, but, like, nobody's going to trade up to 5 in this draft where everything after 3 is sort of eye of the beholder. Like, unless they play the smokescreen game at an elite level and try to, hey, we heard the team at 8 really wants Whitmore, and then we're going to put out for months or weeks that we want Whitmore and hope that something comes together, which, like, that never works. So I'm with you. Just take the player, take somebody who fits, preferably a wing or a forward, because that's what you need. Try to develop them. Hope that Monty is patient enough to do that and see what happens.
Brendon, let me ask you this as we get towards the end here. Over under 2.5 seasons before the Pistons are back in the playoffs.
Oh, I think the bottom of the East is bad enough, or at least in flux enough where I will say under, because I just think that they've shown us over time that they will do what it takes to get the 8th seed if they want it. So that's more about them than it is about the talent on the roster right now or anything like that.
I'm going to lean over just because I like the Magic's future better. I think I like the Pacers' future a little bit better.
Yeah.
I don't think a lot of the other teams above them are planning on going anywhere anytime soon. So obviously some of that will change. Someone will fall off in that that group we saw last year.
I was thinking Brooklyn and Atlanta are two where I could, if they took a step back in the next 3 to 5 years, it wouldn't blow me away because they're in that mode a little bit.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
I'm going to go over just because I think there's stuff in there that's going to make it. I think they're going to get better and get to that in 2 years be get closer to 500. I think that's the kind of the path around, but I think this is still kind of this feels like a slow build to me even with Monty. I just can't see where this is accelerated super quickly for next year.